Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So, James, has your new desk arrived yet?
My new desk?
Yeah, in the Bradfield Centre.
Oh, the reception desk?
Yeah.
The one that we had to close the A14 to deliver, you mean, because it's enormous?
You didn't.
No, we didn't, no. Have you seen it?
No. No, it was all the excitement of the desk was on its way, so I haven't seen it yet, no.
It is massive. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why it's so massive, but have you ever seen documentaries about Route 66 in America, where all of these weird little towns built these weird attractions, like the world's largest elastic band ball and stuff like that? I wonder if it's our tourist attraction to come and see the huge reception desk one. So
that is a great teaser. They can go along, they can hot desk there in the nice new area, they can look at the great big reception desk, have some lunch and bump into loads of people. What a great... I mean, it's working, right?
Yeah, Bo's very excited. She's now got this huge desk to sit behind, so yeah.
You see, I'd be dangerous with a huge desk because I'd know where everything was, but it would be full of stuff.
Well, that's it. Yeah, we've got plenty of space. I'd be impressed if you could fill it up.
Yeah, I reckon I probably could, to be honest, but there we go. So anyway, other than the excitement of the ginormous desk, anything else exciting happening this week?
Well, no events this week, so a little bit kind of head down with some strategic stuff and some planning. We announced a new partnership with Dell Technology, which gives our members discounts on their products, which is nice. And just a little reminder, I spoke about this last week, but the first of the Trinity Bradfield Prize talks is tonight. So if you're affiliated to the University of Cambridge and you're into entrepreneurship, please come along tonight. It's going to be a great session. You'll hear and learn directly from two great local founders. Yeah, so you can find that on the Trinity Bradfield website, which is trinitybradfieldprize.co.uk.
Brilliant. So I think we've maybe both had end of quarteritis last week then, because I thought I was stuck behind a computer and in online meetings. I didn't even get out. So no, I mean, literally trying to get things done. I think there's that rush to the end of the year has started already, hasn't it? So yeah, no major updates from me either this week. I feel dreadfully boring.
We've been doing this nearly 3 years, and I think this is the first time.
Yeah, I don't think I can even conjure anything remotely shareable and interesting that's not confidential. I mean, there is lots of stuff going on, but not that I can actually share. So yeah, so having proved the fact that I'm desperately boring, should we crack on with the news instead then?
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we've got 3 bits of news for you today. That first of all, the number of new UK technology incorporations in the east of England soared to another record high in Q3 2025 as the sector defies ongoing economic uncertainty, and this is according to audit, tax and consulting firm RSM UK. Their analysis found that there were 1,213 new tech incorporations in the east of England during that quarter, jumping 40% from 864 in Q3 2024 a year ago, and up 7% from 1,135 the previous quarter. So again, dynamics show that these companies are still being started and incorporated.
Yeah, and more big numbers from another report this week, which has shown that the East of England has attracted £785 million in venture capital investment in Q3 2025, which is double the value of the previous quarter. And that is according to the latest KPMG Private Enterprise Venture Pulse report. The uplift highlights renewed investor appetite in supporting the region's small business community, according to KPMG. So yeah, it's looking rosy.
Exactly. And then some news from Cambridge Social Enterprise Form the Future, who have strengthened their board with the appointments of 2 leading figures from the region's innovation ecosystem, and they're both joining as non-exec directors. They are Sean Grady, Chair of AstraZeneca UK, and Professor Andy Neely, Chair of Innovate Cambridge, Professor of Manufacturing, and previously, as listeners will know from the podcast, Senior Pro Vice Chancellor for Enterprise and Business Relations at the University of Cambridge. So the 2 of them will definitely add their weight to Form the Future, and congratulations to all of them.
No, yeah, that's really positive, isn't it? So, okay, so on to today's episode. So for today's podcast, we have the second of our exclusive recordings from Cambridge Tech Week 2025. And today we're going to find out all about photonics.
Exactly. The panel includes 5 participants. So we've got Elizabeth Patterson from Seagate Technology, Dr. Gwen Wyatt-Moon of Prospectral, Dr. Josh Silverstone of Hartley Ultrafast, Mark Rushworth of Finchetto Ltd, and Matthew Anderson of Photonics, neatly hosted by Dr. Andy Sellars of Cornerstone.
I'm going to start by asking what's on the horizon, what can we expect in tech from photonics? It related to compute. Perhaps I could start with Josh. Would you be happy to open on that?
Sure. We've had a lot of discussion of the kind of commercial side of things, policy side of things. I am really excited to talk a bit about technology. On the horizon for us, from a computing point of view, obviously, silicon photonics is, we had a whole session talking about silicon. Silicon is big. Silicon photonics is finally becoming mature, and we can contemplate using it for really, really large-scale stuff, which is very exciting. Now, for me, there are other materials on the horizon. It's clear that silicon photonics can't do everything that we want, while at the same time, silicon itself is going in the direction of really, really big devices. We're starting to talk about wafer-scale integration in electronics. You see the likes of Cerebras building really, really massive domain-specific computing chips. I'm looking forward to seeing that propagate into photonics as well. I'll just leave there. There's many of us.
Cool. Gwen?
Yeah, so from my point of view, in terms of computation, obviously silicon photonics is going to probably revolutionize stuff like data communication. Also, a lot of what's coming out as well is stuff within the design world as well. So lots of really powerful AI and computer vision tasks can now be done utilizing very good design software in the photonics world.
Yeah, I think from a Seagate perspective, we've recently qualified our new hard drive device, which is Mosaic 4+, which uses HAMR technology, heat-assisted magnetic recording heads, and that has 30 tetrabytes. It can store 30 tetrabytes worth of data, which is around, 15 million photographs, I think. It's a huge capacity, and I think what we're hoping to do with our photonic technology now is on a path to 60 tetrabytes, and even beyond that to 100 tetrabytes. Ambition is no end, and we're hoping to do that R&D work in Northern Ireland.
That is phenomenal. So that real growth and addressing that enormous sort of data requirement.
Yeah, especially with AI.
Especially with AI,
yeah.
Absolutely. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. So you asked about compute specifically, so I won't go into other areas of photonics. And by the way, photonics is an underpinning technology in quantum as well. So let's just steal everything they said and put it into our argument. I think there's 2 areas of interest within the big theme at the moment, which is AI and high-performance compute data centers. And the 2 themes of photonics are the communication, so the interconnects, the getting the data from one place to another. And you might or might not have seen an announcement from NVIDIA when Jensen stood up at the OFC conference earlier this year and talked about the co-packaged optics that they've developed. So this is about getting the source of the communication of data and the receive of the communication of data closer to the electronics, closer to the silicon, all right? So that's about reducing latency, reducing power consumption. So there's a lot of work there. There's optical interconnects, there is optical interposers, which is even closer to the silicon. And so that's the transmission of data. And then the other area, which is kind of relevant right now, is what Finchetto is working on, which is the network switching side. So this is rather than going from a single place to a second place, you're going between multiple locations. So you're able to switch between elements in a network or nodes in a network. They're the areas that photonics is really contributing to at the moment in compute.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what the other panelists are saying. From our perspective, you've got this trend of the optics moving closer and closer to the compute to enable higher bandwidth, for AI model training. But I'd also like to reiterate that photonics in general as a technology, as Mark just said, underpins a lot of different areas. Quantum computing is one of them. We had a good panel session earlier about quantum computing, and one of the things there is photonics is going to be crucial for scaling different modalities of quantum computers, so they're all going to need to communicate and talk to each other, and that is likely going to be a photonic interface. So that's one of the things that we see as a technology area where photonics is really being of high interest.
So that's some really exciting avenues there as to how we're opening up and addressing the compute. When we think about semiconductors, we tend to think about primarily the Far East. Now, I'm getting quite a sense here that photonics is something where the UK has a really good opportunity. So if we can reflect on that and how we think the UK, where our critical strengths are and how we might be able to address some of these opportunities that are coming along. So Mark, you talked about optical connect and optical transmission. How do you see the UK positioned in being able to address these sort of markets?
So I think that there's multiple parts to any answer to that. You need to have a skill set within the UK. You need to have an intellectual capability to be able to design and develop photonic systems. You need to be able to access manufacturing, characterization. You need to be able to scale a company in order to eventually commercialize your work. Otherwise, it doesn't have the value add to UK PLC that you're really describing there. So where does the UK position itself? I'll tell you what, let me pick on manufacturing for argument's sake. Other people could talk about education and skill set. I actually believe that the UK has a massive opportunity in photonics manufacturing. The reason I believe that is because there is a fundamental difference between electronics manufacturing, which is where you get onto the TSMC 2 to 5 nanometer node sizes that are right at the bleeding edge of what can be done from a material science perspective, to photonics, where your devices, in general, there are exceptions, but in general, are at 200 nanometers feature size. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, if you talk about silicon specifically, the manufacturing technologies that are used to manufacture the silicon photonic circuits are from 1990s electronics. Yeah. We have a fantastic facility in Southampton called Cornerstone, which is aligned with Southampton University, which has a stepper from Intel from the 1990s. Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is there is an opportunity where everybody believes that cutting-edge electronics is beyond the UK's capability. Cutting-edge photonics is not. Discuss.
I think I would maybe counter that slightly.
Sure.
So I'm in the photonics world and my structures are around 50 nanometers. So I can't manufacture in the UK and we need to go to Taiwan and Japan. But what I would say in other opportunity spaces where you're talking about comms and PICs, I think there is a space to manufacture. The only thing I would worry about is obviously people like TSMC are now having kind of a strategy on photonic circuits. And what we would need in the UK is an ability to move quickly to kind of make sure we are still competitive in those spaces.
Okay, so for your company in particular, Gwen, are you doing part of the development in the UK? Is there prototyping, a pilot line? Is that the sort of approach you're taking? And then taking it to large scale overseas?
Yeah, I mean, we actually fab in the University of Cambridge, so very nearby. But once we scale, we'll be using partners either in Europe and then we'll most likely go out to Japan, I would imagine.
Cool, so it sounds a good sort of basis we have in the UK in terms of the different aspects and the different capabilities. How about Seagate, clearly?
Yeah, well, we do manufacturing at Seagate. We have the big wafer fab facility, which is in Northern Ireland. It has the clean room capability. It's really state of the art. And I think there is definitely potential with further investment and other partners. If we wanted to have different wavelengths and different nanometers, then that could be a definite pathway for the future. But it would take investment into that ecosystem, not just private sector, but I think it would require other partners to participate in that, to understand firstly what the need is, and then to build to address that need. But the capability exists. We have that sovereign national capability in the UK, and Seagate, we like to think we're an exemplar of that.
Josh?
I would challenge the assumption that it matters where the manufacturing happens, actually.
Sure.
I think that the business of manufacturing is extraordinarily scale dependent. And in a world of kind of tightening borders, I think it's harder and harder to make your place, wherever that is, be the place where the next TSMC grows. That said, I would just kind of observe that Silicon Valley makes no silicon today and is nonetheless quite successful. Yeah. I think that we could do worse than to try and I don't want to say emulate, but emulate that success. The design is where the good stuff is, and we don't necessarily need to be doing the manufacturing here to really be very, very successful in photonics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think I'll take a bit of the diplomatic route and say, why not do both? So the UK does have incredible photonics expertise in centres like Southampton with Cornerstone, Bristol with the quantum integrated photonics, and Glasgow. And one of the different things about photonics as well, compared to electronics, is not necessarily the volume that you need. So a lot of the applications in photonics, you're maybe not going to reach those volumes that you are in the electronics industry, but the end market value is still very high. So you can have lower volume manufacturing, but still have high value in that chain. And that's something where Cornerstone, for example, in the UK, with its sort of capability with a stepper from the 1990s, can make quite a lot of progress in the R&D stages to address some of those application areas. And then when you're looking to move to real scale, okay, now you're looking at partnerships further abroad. Now you're wanting to use that larger semiconductor ecosystem and manufacturing industry. But I think you can achieve a lot with the kind of lower volume capabilities that we have really strong expertise in already.
I just put a bit of context on that. So if you think, TSMC, let's take TSMC as the example. In 2024, they ran 17 million wafer starts, okay? 74% of their revenue that year was driven by 7 nanometer and below feature size, okay? Now, the revenue is going to be not equivalent to the volume, but just give you a bit of a flavor. If you were to take an average chip size, that's in the tens of billions of chips, right? The field we're working in, which is network switches, 3 million Ethernet switches were sold in the same period, all right? You don't need tens of billions of chips. You need 3 million chips for 1 year. So there's the contextual difference.
Really interesting, thank you. I'm going to I'd really like to open this up to audience participation, so please have your questions ready. I think what we've heard is some sort of really exciting market opportunities where the UK has some great potential, and also it doesn't require the latest cutting edge technology in order to fabricate. Where do you see the UK's competitive strengths, and how do we sort of maintain that kind of lead to make sure we stay ahead of the field? If you would like to kick off, Mark?
Yeah, do you want me to go? Okay. So I'm going to slightly divert things and not talk about silicon in this case. So actually, I think where the real value is, well, let's start again. So photonics is kind of interesting and separated from electronics because silicon in photonics has been used for volume applications, so primarily transceivers. It is not necessarily the best material for photonics for a number of reasons. You can't create a laser with silicon. So there's no game. Can't create a laser. You cannot get high-end conversion efficiency for nonlinear processes. A little bit niche, right? But that is a thing. And it's a thing that's particularly used in quantum, and it's particularly used in what we're doing. So that means that in photonics, you look at other materials. And actually, photonics is a lot about materials science. It's how do you create structures with different material platforms that do things that you need to do with photons, right? I'll give you our context at Finchetto. We're using nonlinear photonics, and we're using a material called thin-film lithium niobate. It's a pretty interesting material at the moment. It dominates a lot of conversations in the photonics world. But the reason we use it is for the nonlinear qualities. There's another reason people might use it for extremely fast electro-optical modulation, modulating transceiver signals. Anyway, so photonics, you've got a little bit of a horses for courses argument. You want one material to do one thing, you want another material to do another. Back to your question then, Andy. It's about where the value is. And I think the value is in harnessing some of these other use cases with these other materials, and you might have to pick your material and pick wisely. But if you're able to create a low to medium volume capability in a material, in photonics, that is highly impactful, that has not been jumped on by the global ecosystem to date, then you carve out a really competitive global position for the UK or for Europe or whoever it might be. But that is where we are with photonics.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'd also say in the UK, one of the things we're very good at is packaging as well, and you can see that in the UK ecosystem where packaging within silicon photonics has become kind of one of their important key technologies. And you can see that with really small companies and also what's going on in Glasgow as well. And I think that's a key strength that we should realize we have and is really useful for prototyping and scaling as well.
Cool.
I say we have a different spin on what we have as a strength here is the ecosystem that exists. The fact that we do have very strong connections with universities. We have a good talent pipeline, I think, in the UK that already exists, but there's good ecosystem within clusters in the UK that doesn't quite exist elsewhere in the world. That's certainly what we see between universities, between academia, but also between local governments, where there's a lot of good open dialogue that currently exists. Yeah, I think that's a real strong capability that we should be building on more and seeing that as a competitive advantage that other areas in the world currently don't have. And that really drives the private sector investment to know that that exists and safeguard for the future for their employee type pipelines as well.
Certainly, education, skills, pipeline is very good here. I think one of our challenges is keeping those skills locally. I have a feeling we'll come onto that. I would just highlight, though, that, speaking again, pulling back to silicon, I love silicon, but pulling back to silicon, the world's first silicon photonics company was in the UK, right? It was Bookham Technology back in the day. Obviously, went bust, became Aclaro, went bust. Actually, Aclaro stopped making the silicon photonics before they wrapped up. But yeah, we have a real pedigree with this thing. We have really, really bright people. We have people doing research in very relevant areas. We're talking about 3 or 4 of them today. Quantum, semiconductor, material science. All of these things are really, really relevant. And so I think we have a real strength. Ultimately, this comes down to people. There are a few environmental factors that would help. Some kind of life in the capital markets would help. I think some of us can sympathize. But I think that we are in a position of strength and we have an opportunity.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I think build on a little bit from what everyone said. I think that ecosystem that we have for photonics in the UK is there, and it is good for that low, medium volume target of being able to design using the expertise of the people and the academics in the universities, which we're very strong in, going to manufacture at places like Cornerstone, and then we do have packaging facilities in Scotland with Alta and down in Torbay with Bay Photonics. So it is an area where you can go from concept to prototype demonstration within the UK relatively quickly and relatively accessible. And just, again, building on what Mark was saying about the sort of heritage we have with the novel materials, the compound semiconductors in the South Wales cluster, and using that for photonics, there inherently comes in the challenges of doing this sort of design on those different materials and processes. And that's something that at Wave that we're really focusing on, is trying to bring down the barriers of entering the design space in photonics for those different material platforms where you will see exciting end applications coming out in places, in things like quantum and sensing and that sort of thing. So it's something that we're super interested in. It's what we're really excited about. And we think the UK is a great place to go through this whole R&D development ecosystem to get to something that then you can say, okay, I can now go raise further investment to scale this even more.
I feel that we just kind of got going, to be quite honest, so it's really exciting and a vibrant discussion. We've heard about a fantastic ecosystem in the UK, lots of opportunities to build into the industrial strategy over a 10-year period where the UK can really play a strong part. Please thank the panel for their contributions and discussions.
I mean, it's really great to see Wave going from strength to strength, and it's been almost a year since we had James on the podcast with us.
It certainly has. Another year flies by. And we should also get Gwen on. She's a 21 to Watch alumna from this year. So it'd be really interesting to dig a little bit deeper on what they're doing at Prospectral.
Absolutely. And for the last fix of Photonics today, we'll end with the keynote from Professor Andrew Fitzgibbon from the University of Cambridge Engineering Department.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely thrilling to be here. I'm an AI computer vision researcher. My credentials are basically that I've spent the last 20 or 30 years building computer vision systems that work. So, turn of the century, we built camera trackers that would enable candles to be held up in Harry Potter movies, that would enable statues, to point at hobbits on boats. And my favorite bit was extra snow at the end of Bridget Jones's Diary. Working in the movie industry, delivering product. I then worked at Microsoft on human body tracking for the Kinect video game system. And then I worked on hand tracking for an AR/VR system, the Microsoft AR/VR system. So if you've used hand tracking today, there will be code in there that inherits from mine. Okay, so I'm a user of this compute, but I work for one of the companies that provides this compute. Why? Because, of course, I love computers and I love computation. Graphcore is a company Bristol-based company, 300 or 400 people in Bristol at the moment, and maybe 100 people around the world. We build chips that compete with the leading players, NVIDIA, in both training and inference. And recently we were bought by SoftBank, so we're now part of the SoftBank group. And as you probably know, the SoftBank group is going to bring us artificial superintelligence. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why that's a good idea and how we can all help. I'm a massive fanboy of the people in the company. Designing chips needs, brilliant chip designers, brilliant hardware builders, brilliant testers, brilliant software teams, compiler people, applications engineers. It's a fantastic group of people needed to bring chips into the world. And a tool that is widely used in the chip business, as you probably know, is simulation. So my job is to be a simulator. I'm a customer simulator. My job is to sit there and try and invent new AI algorithms that break the other people's chips and work really well on ours. So we've had some success with that. We've brought 8-bit floating point. We've been good at molecular machine learning. Well done us. I said I was the user, but of course, we are all the users. And I want to maybe just paint a little bit of an optimistic and then pessimistic and then optimistic vision about where we're going and what we're going to do with all this compute. Who has been in a Waymo? Only a few people. Isn't it incredible? You sit in the car and it drives itself. I've been saying this was going to happen for, I lost 2 bets already. I won the next one. The car that drives itself, you've all heard people evangelize about it, but my favorite image is picture Gwyder Street in Cambridge, or picture a street wherever you live, and imagine it with no parked cars. That's a very, very different world, right? If there are no parked cars, you can put trees down the middle. You can live in a completely different world, and it's a technology that we are enabling only by learning more and more about machine learning algorithms and AI. We've worked, and we heard this morning a lot about healthcare applications. So we can make ourselves, live longer, live happier, live better. Who here has vibe coded? A few people, okay. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. This year, for the first time in 20 years, I wrote the first paper I've been able to do on my own, because ChatGPT did loads of the coding work for me, ran the experiments. All I needed to do was do the idea. And I'm not too worried about losing my job as a coder, because so many programs that we want to write don't exist yet. Simple things like, show me the points of Everton versus Liverpool in the Premier League as a function of time. It's that's a coding job that today only a tiny number of us can do, but of course we're all going to be able to do it. So I think we'll just do 10x more coding rather than reducing the number of people by 10x. It's kind of Jevons in reverse, doing a good thing. Who is worried about deep fakes? Oh, that's good. Okay, some are not. So we delivered software to the movie industry, year 2000. And immediately, and what this software would allow you to do was blend computer graphics content with real content so that you couldn't tell them apart. And of course, we're totally used to this now. We understand that every single pixel of any, certainly of any sort of action type film, but almost any film that you see today, every single pixel has been changed from what the camera saw. And this worried us 20 years ago, and it's worrying us now because we can create fake pixels. Making art is probably one of the things we're all really terrible at. Most of us are crap drawers. It is utterly amazing now to be given a tool where you can do something that looks like you made art. Yes, it's taking away some work that other people could do, but honestly, I think the work that it takes away is the less interesting part of the work. We will find work for ourselves. I'll get to that in a minute. But the real thing about the deep fakes and the worry about computer-generated content for me was strange. There was a funny century. The 20th century was a very peculiar century because it was the only time we had access to an external truth. The century where the camera existed. And you could take a photograph of something and present that photograph to somebody else, and they'd be pretty sure that the thing that was depicted in the photograph had happened. But our legal system isn't 125 years old. Our legal system is thousands of years old. We humans have been able to get by on testimony, much of it false. That's how the legal system behaves. So again, I believe, and I believe it's happening already, that we're learning not to be convinced by the deep fakes. Yes, we've weakened the power of the image as a conveyor of truth, but it's a power we only had for a very weird century, the last one. So I'm being sort of ridiculously optimistic. You know, what does scare me? You know, bad men scare me. Before I get to the bad men, and there are probably bad women too, but they're mostly men at the moment. Before I get there, what else scares me? I'll tell you what scares me. What if floating point multiply, and this is at a very tedious, trivial level, what if floating point multiply turns out to be supplanted by something else? Right? I would love to multiply two streams of photons or stuff and do something different. So I'm delighted by, because I'm frightened by stories of quantum, stories of photons. I've spent my entire life just trying to not inconvenience electrons too much, and now I have to worry about photons and other stuff as well. So maybe that's a bit of a tedious frightening, but that is what. So what am I going to say? I'm going to say humans have been pretty bad places the last century. I think you could think of a few times humans have been in pretty bad places. And you know, I nearly wore my Obama for Change t-shirt today. I think we can get to good places as well. And I really hope that when we build technologies, we are building those technologies to provide us with, you know, food, shelter, keep ourselves healthy, and then, of course, we can spend the rest of it making art, which, of course, we're all bad at and we would love to do. So that's my optimistic vision for why we should keep innovating. Thank you.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.